be permitted, and that any items that are confined to the grave area only. We believe this allows us to use flexibility to personalise the entire child grave, not just the headstone, and not that all non-glass items within reason can be placed there. So why have the parents been contacted to remove plastic wind chimes, stones, etc., and in some cases insisted removal? Additionally, we can understand that there have been no changes to the existing cemetery policy, but in most cases the policy has not been enforced until now. Making the decision to rigorously enforce this policy has caused great distress to many families. Therefore, the undersigned call on Torfaen Council to have due regard to the feelings, thoughts and opinions of the relatives, many of whom have actively cleaned and maintained the plots. We are outraged at the enforcement of the policy after all these years, and even more distressed at the incorrect enforcement of the policy in relation to the baby graves.
Thank you. Normally, members, we would refer to the petition to the relevant executive member for them to investigate, respond and report back. The executive member for Neighbourhood Services is not here today, so I propose that we give the petition to the Chief Officer for Neighbourhood Services on the executive member's behalf. Everyone agreed? Thank you. I know there's a member's question which is relevant to this matter later on, so perhaps the leader can address it then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be referring to this. There is a question on this, and I'll make a statement then.
Okay. Agenda item 8, public question time. There were no public questions received by the deadline for today, so we'll move straight on to the next agenda item 9, announcements. I'm sure you were all aware that the Leader of the Council, Councillor Bob Wellington, has been recognised on the Queen's Birthday Honours list and has been awarded a CBE for services to local government. So I'm sure you would like to join me and congratulate him on his award. Well done. Also, pupils from Pontnewydd School are today competing in Coventry in the Formula 1 in School's 3D Jaguar Challenge UK final. They're the only school in South Wales, and there are other 40 schools in the country taking part. The school beat 21 other teams to represent South Wales and will now compete against the best schools from North Wales, Ireland and Scotland to become the UK champions for 2014. Councillors, I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing them all the best of luck. Councillor Yole?
Yeah. I think it would be remiss of the Council to let this occasion go by without at least an appropriate round of applause. The kids at the school and the staff have done a tremendous job. They've done a tremendous job for several years now. They came, I think it was about 2 years ago, to give a presentation on this particular project, and they've gone even further in terms of progress in this context. I think the least we can do is to give them a hearty round of applause and to note their achievement and our support for their achievement in some kind of formal recognition that we will, no doubt in the fullness of time, light on and deal with. So for the time being, can we all give a round of applause for the kids at Pontnewydd School?
Right, thank you, Member. Leader, do you have any announcements today, please?
Two announcements, Madam Mayor. First one on the Pension Fund Award. The Greater Gwent Torfaen Pension Fund made it into the finals of the Professional Pension Magazine's Pension Schemes of the Year Award 2014. The fund was shortlisted in a category of public sector defined benefits communications, where the achievement of our fund was recognised alongside those of some of the largest funds in the UK. At the finals held in the House of Commons, we were unfortunately pipped at the post by the Greater Manchester Pension Fund. However, I hope that over the next 12 months we can build on this year's success to at least maintain our position amongst the leading funds holders whilst aiming to win the national award next time. To come second to the largest UK funds holders is remarkable, especially when you consider how small comparatively to others our pension team is. Congratulations to our pension team and to the members that sit on it. The second one is an announcement which I've been asked by Councillor Mary Barnett to make. July the 11th is the closing date of the consultation period set by the Department for Communities and Local Government UK Parliament on opportunities to collaborate cost savings and efficiencies. Our Greater Gwent Pension Committee members are working with officers to produce a response on behalf of the Greater Gwent Pension Fund. However, the Chair considers it would be advisable also to submit a response from Torfaen County Borough programme. Its programme reinforces the views that through active learning and application harnesses the potential leadership skills of participants, creating a greater future for a cadre of public speakers. Somebody got my notes mixed up. Officers take cognizance of that, and congratulations again to the pension team. Yeah. Right, that's that.
Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
Another one. I got it. I need to make another one, Madam Mayor, which I forgot. And it's about yourself, actually, and how successful you are. Right, I'd like to offer my congratulations to Mandy Owen, our Mayor, on a recent successful application for the Leadership in Public Service Masters Programme. The programme is a national award-winning two-year leadership programme developed by Torfaen County Borough Council and their partners University of Wales Trinity and St David's IF Development. The programme enables senior managers and elected representatives from across the public sector to develop the skills needed to develop change and improve public services from the inside out, developing the leadership of the future and making a real difference to the lives of our citizens. Manly is the only selected member in Greater Gwent to be successful. That's very, very, very important. It is a fantastic opportunity for Mandy and the other 9 successful candidates from across the region, represented from Gwent Police Authority and Iron Bevan Health Board, Caerphilly Council, South Wales Fire and Police Rescue, and officers of the Police Commissioners. Melian Homes and the Council will make an exciting cohort, all focusing upon making a positive difference to public services across the region. The recently published Williams Review introduced the Leadership Framework for Wales, which emphasised the importance of value-based leadership. The leadership programme reinforces this view and, through active learning and application, harnesses the potential leadership skills of participants, creating a future cadre of public sector value-based leaders. Councillor Richard Clark and Councillor Fiona Cross successfully gained their master's degree in public service leadership last year. The first councillors in Wales to achieve such a distinguished qualification. I'd like to wish Mandy every success and look forward to following her progress and reaping some of the benefits in our own council chambers in years to follow. Congratulations, Mandy.
Thank you very much. We'll move on. Chief Executive, have you got any announcements?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You beat me to it in announcing the Leaders CBE, but I would just like to say a couple of words. The Leader received his CBE in the Birthday Honours list this year for services to local government and heritage, and I think the heritage part is very important because the Blaenavon World Heritage Site would not be with us now if it weren't for the championing that the Leader made of that. It's recognising a very long-standing contribution to Torfaen, to the region and to Wales. As we know, the Leader now has a major national role as leader of the WLGA. He made an extremely powerful speech, which I was privileged to witness last week, when he took the challenge to Welsh Government about how we are supposed to manage with the amount of resources we have going forward. I've never seen a Welsh Government Minister quite so uncomfortable, and I think it was a point when that needed to be done. As far as I know, the Leader is the longest-serving local government leader in Wales, and I'm extremely proud of you, Leader, and I wanted to say that on behalf of myself and my staff. I'm sure many other people in the Chamber share that sentiment, and it's extremely well deserved, so well done.
Thank you. Agenda item 10, revised cabinet. Sorry, Councillor Morby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I just add to the announcement that the leader made in respect of the pensions consultation, the pension scheme consultation? I think it's important for Council to agree the following. July the 11th is the closing date for the consultation period set by the Department for Communities and Local Government, i.e. the UK Parliament, for responses to this consultation. Our own Pensions Committee members are working with officers to produce a response on behalf of the Greater Gwent Pension Fund. However, the Chair, Mary Barnett, sitting to my left, considers it would be advisable also to submit a response direct from this Council, and it's proposed, therefore, that we delegate the authorship and submission of this Torfaen Council response to our Pensions Committee members and officers. And as this is a cross-party committee, it's hoped that members will support this proposal because the next full Council meeting falls beyond the consultation period. Obviously, copies of the response submission will be available for all members in due course. Thank you.
Is that agreed, members? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move to agenda item 10, revised cabinet and member champion roles. Leader, can you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a revision of the responsibilities of cabinet. Members might or might not be aware, but the Assembly has been arguing for the last year that we need, each council needs a diversity champion. The way we've arranged this and broken up some of the Council executive members' responsibilities achieves that.
Members, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Rees?
Diolch, Madam. I'm just wondering, Leader, what criteria have you used to select the individuals for the roles as members' champions, and how would councillors who are not members of the Labour Party know about how to enter that process?
I'm certain if you write to me, Councillor Rees, then we'll look at that. I think it's necessary to have champions from across the board, actually. And if you've got a concern or you indeed feel that there are somebody that wants to be a champion, then we'll give that consideration.
Councillor Smith?
Next year.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Ordinarily I wouldn't get terribly excited about this, and I would be slightly disinterested. But actually, I take the view on these proposed changes that I'm inclined to go along with it for two reasons. First reason being that it may actually deliver better services for the residents of Torfaen, and that is what we are all here for. So for that reason, I'm content to go along with it. And the second reason is that the greater the extent to which Councillor Wellington refines and reshuffles his pack of cards, so to speak, the fewer excuses that he and the administration would then have in future for failure to deliver, because the team that he has is as closely aligned, presumably, to what he thinks is appropriate. So, I don't think they're terribly cynical reasons, but I think I'm inclined to go along with this and hope, because we are all here in the interest of Torfaen residents, that it does actually enable the Council to deliver more efficiently and more effectively for our residents.
The recommendations are on page 44 and 45 of the agenda. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. Agenda item 11, off-road biking. PC Damien Stockwin of Gwent Police, welcome to the meeting. Can you tell us about your plans, please?
Thank you. Good morning. For those of you who haven't met me, I do know a few familiar faces. I'm PC Damien Stockwin. I'm part of the neighbourhood team based here in Pontypool. I was given the task of looking at the off-road bikes. I wasn't here last summer in the Pontypool area, so it was all new news to me, not the off-road bike phenomenon, as it were, but the fact that the problems you have in Pontypool specifically. So the first thing that I did back at the beginning of, towards the end of May it was to create an operational order to tackle the problem. And what I intend to do is simply go through that for the information of yourselves. There are limitations in what we can do, and obviously I've had to work within those. Essentially, the problem of off-road motorcycles destroying our local countryside have been highlighted throughout the Pontypool section. The problem has been identified through the PAC process, also contact with local councillors, and also calls, obviously, direct to the police. It is a notoriously difficult problem to resolve, and it is a fact, a national issue as opposed to a local one. These off-road motorcyclists tend to destroy local countryside as well as commit road traffic offences by travelling on roads, riding unregistered and uninsured motorcycles. Traditionally, the problem is worse in the summer, particularly on weekends. In the past, the operation has been used to tackle the problem. However, it's proved extremely expensive, labour-intensive, and whilst the results are good, word soon gets out that the off-road section are on the mountains and they soon become deserted. That's when the operation was used for sole days where we do a multi-agency approach. So what I intended to do was to look at it to capitalise on the fact that they are deserted when they hear we're in the area, and to create a more concerted and consistent approach to the problem. So in response to that, what I've done is the operation will take place every Saturday and Sunday throughout the months of April, May, June, July and August. The operation will run from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays and 12 p.m. till 7 p.m. on Sundays. Essentially, we have a briefing at Pontypool Police Station for the police officers involved at either 1 or 12, respectively. And then afternoon civilian officers who come on duty will be briefed then at 2 o'clock when they start to work alongside us. Basically, as I said, I want to create a consistent and effective approach, which has basically entailed neighbourhood officers having their shifts altered on every weekend. As you can appreciate, we do a lot of evening shifts, so we've had to move those forward. And over the last couple of months that I have done it, every officer has been very flexible and been able to accommodate the moves. As I've said, the police civilian officers also will assist. They haven't had to change their shifts. I've simply accommodated them in the operation for the afternoon shifts that they already work. What we're doing is we're targeting known meeting places, garage forecourts, pub car parks, where we know that off-road bikes historically are known to meet. We're looking at high visibility patrols of hotspot areas, including static stop and checkpoints. Officers will use we have two marked police vehicles. One of those, I'm happy to say, is a 4x4 vehicle, which allows us much more flexibility. And we have a zero tolerance approach to be adopted. All offences disclosed will be prosecuted. The issue that we've come up against as it's evolved is the fact that we cannot pursue off-road bikes. We're very limited on being able to go up on the mountains, as it were, after them. So we're looking mainly at targeting them being loaded and unloaded, for want of a better phrase, and also them obviously making their way on the roads. Again, have to be very careful. We don't want to be pursuing off-road bikes along main highways. That would just be not a good situation to be in at all. So we're trying to adopt a safe method to highlight these offenders. Basically, we have an operational commander. When I'm not working weekends, my opposite number runs the operation. And we also give out the Section 59 seizure notices, which basically allows us to take the vehicles off people if they are causing a nuisance, and if they have a warning already listed against either them or their vehicle, no matter what vehicle they're on, that will also always be taken off them. Basically, we've had very, very good results in that the number of calls we received went down to 0 during the month of June. And we've had a couple over the weekend. Unfortunately, officers were so committed with the calls, we didn't get out there as much as I'd have liked. So we're looking at, again, trying to peel away from the shift and getting out there, because obviously the high visibility approach is working and we're having success with that, consistency that it affords us. And that's basically where we're at. Also, what I've done is I've gone out to meetings because I'm interested in any input, really. As I say, it is evolving. It is a difficult problem to tackle. And any input that I can get, I've recently went to a meeting where they said that foot patrols would pay dividends up along the cycle tracks. That's something we're going to look at doing now. Wasn't something I thought of. And as I say, it's an evolving operation over the summer, and I will then be just summarising it ready for next year, for when we need to kick it into gear again.
Right, I'm going to open it up for members to have any questions or comments. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome Damien. I welcome the initiatives that you've put in place, because I'm particularly concerned right throughout the borough, obviously, but I've got particular concern about the Blenavon World Heritage. This impinges on the landscape in Blenavon and the surrounding areas. And in fact, as we speak now, it's not only motorbikes, it's four-wheeled vehicles as well. As I speak, there is a four-wheeled vehicle abandoned on the Coity Mountain. So it's not only bikes that we're on about here. But I am heartened to hear the measures that you're putting in place. But having said that, I was at a meeting at Blaenau recently with my ward colleagues, and there was no person from this area there representing us. So I'd like to see in the future that that would be taken up. And on that note, are you working with other officers in other areas? I refer mainly to Blaenau Gwent, where their commoners there have been in fact threatened. I mean, at the end of the day, it is their livelihood, and I think we should be very proactive in this. Thank you.
Would you like to take them one at a time, or would you?
Yeah, I think that would be easier. Yeah. To be honest, I'm at PC level. I was asked to look at this for the Pontypool section. My sergeant, I have no doubt, is in constant contact with officers that he works alongside over in Blaenau Gwent. I'm not personally involved with working with them, but obviously if it's something that you think we can benefit from, an approach we can look at, then that's what we'll do. As I say, it is evolving, and I was given it as a local problem, but it's like anything else. You start to look at it, and it simply grows in front of your eyes. The 4x4 vehicles wasn't included in this, but obviously it's something that I've become aware of, and that's something that we're going to have to look at, I think, realistically including in the operational order. And as opposed to calling it off-road bike operation, we're going to possibly look at it as off-road vehicle operation. And then, sorry, you referred to another meeting that there wasn't a representative?
There was Blaenau Gwent called by the commoners, and all officers for relevant areas were present, but there was no officers from Torvine present, and it was very embarrassing, really. And I'd like to think in the future that there would be officers present if a meeting like this was called again.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd certainly welcome the opportunity to go to any meeting like that looks at these issues. Obviously, if I'm doing the operational order for the area, the more information I can get, the better it is for me. So I'd certainly be interested in when those meetings are, and if there's any in the future, because I would attend to represent the Pontypool section.
Come back briefly, Madam Mayor. Obviously, you're new in post, Damien, and I wish you well for your future and his efficiencies. But as you know, there was an officer seconded to the Forgotten Landscapes, Rob Maddox, who done a very, very good job, actually, of trying to curtail these problems. I would like to think that possibly in the future we could look to getting another officer seconded.
Yeah, I mean, you say I'm new to the force, so I got 20 years in, so I'm not new to the force, I'm just new to Pontypool. But yeah, that's certainly something we can do, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Gwynaira Clark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a serious problem, but it's not a problem just to be dealt with by the police. I have to say that. This is a problem that we need to be looking at as an authority and with other partners. The problem out there for people, for residents, and you and I have spoke about this many, many times, is absolutely horrendous. It's destroying their lives. They've got a right to live in relative peace, and they haven't got that in certain areas of our community. So I'm hoping whatever plans you've got, that we're not going to advertise them too much, because we need to get these people off our mountains, from our parks, from wherever they're destroying the areas. There is an issue about we should have land available to accommodate off-road bikes, and that's something else we're going to have to look long-term. And I think there is a question coming later on from a member of the council that might outline some of the issues that we need to be looking at in the future.
Councillor Lewis-Jones.
Yeah, I would like to thank Damien for all the hard work he's put into this in a very, very short time. We had acute problems in Trevethin and Pennygan and Pontnewydd with off-road motorcycles using the streets as a racing circuit. And, you know, in a relatively short time, you've reduced the problem quite dramatically. The issue of motorcycling on the mountainside or wherever is horrific. And as Stuart has already said, it's even gone out to four-wheel drive vehicles. And the incident he refers to at Blaenau Gwent, the problem is there was funding available for PC Maddox via the schemes like Forgotten Landscapes and so on and so on. But like all these schemes, they short-lived 3-year funding or whatever, and the funding is gone. Now we need to be pressurising the Assembly, you know, they've initiated something and now it's gone. You know, people are feeling very endangered, in fact, you know, because I know some of these four-wheel drive people actually drive at the commoners when they try to stop them. It could end up in a fatality, you know, and the quicker we have a meeting with our Assembly member, the Assembly member for Blaenau Gwent as well, to try and get something in place. But what has been a bit of a disappointment to me is the fact that we were going to see this Circuit of Wales over at Blaenau Gwent, which could have enveloped this kind of thing. You know, kids who want to ride motorbikes and go on the proper track could have gone there. Now, instead of that, we've seen it descend into a political farce. And the quicker we can support that Circuit of Wales at Blaenau Gwent, the better it'll be for all the surrounding areas, you know, who are serious about dealing with this motorbike problem. Now, to actually think about creating a track in Torfaen, you know, we've been here 30 years. In my experience, we've seen different councils set up this kind of thing, and all have failed, because this is motorsport, you know, and there's very serious issues involved in motorsport. The only motorsport licence we have in Torfaen is the go-kart track out at Mamilad. When we actually contemplated setting up something in council land in Torfaen, you know, there are huge issues to be dealt with. I mean, licensing and so on, you know, health and safety, noise nuisance, storage of petrol, how these vehicles get back and forth of site. You know, it's not an easy issue to deal with. But I'd like to congratulate PC on all the work he's done with his colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Damien, for your information. Will any seizures of off-road bikes be reported on OWL to highlight the success and inform residents?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can look at doing. We haven't been doing it because, although we've been doing the high visibility patrols, we have to be careful what we do put in the public domain. But I think if that's something you think would help the operation, then that's something we can look at doing.
Councillor Richard Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just a query to the police officer. There was an Inspector Baker, I believe back in 2006, 2008. He held a workshop in Cwmbran following concerns from what's called the North and South Action Team, which is a group of members and other interested bodies. And Inspector Baker from that workshop, and some people in this room actually attended that, I remember their faces there, had a three-strand approach to this. You've dealt with the one-strand enforcement. Gwenaira touched on the other one of multi-agency and almost education. For the life of me, I can't remember what the third was, but there is a report from Inspector Baker, which I would hope still is somewhere within the police service. And what you've pointed out today is right and proper to do, the enforcement of it, but it does take this multi-agency approach, as Gwenaira said, to actually get the education. With regard to Councillor Seaborn and Owl, at that particular time there was a notorious chap in Cwmbran, and the Argus got involved and actually showed the before and after of his motorbike being crushed and what have you. And I understand that had great effect on some of the motorcyclists because they didn't want to lose their precious vehicle. So I will dig around my papers. I'm a notorious hoarder. If I have got a copy of the report, I'll send it to you if the police haven't got it themselves.
Councillor Ashley.
Following on from what Richard and Gwenaira have said, we've got a lot of history because I've been a community councillor 20 years in Cwmbran. And the issues around mountains, motorbikes, along Councillor Lewis-Jones on this, it's throughout the valley. And the effectiveness of crushing motorbikes off-road, that was very effective. But the problem we got is, you've just come in, it sounds that you've just done a project, we go back a long time on this. But what I wanted to highlight, and I think Gwenaira's brought it up, is there's a lot of very respectable motorcyclists around. A lot of people, it's a hobby. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about are the people that make nuisance of themselves for motorcycles. And a lot of policemen, a lot of officers in this council that ride motorbikes. It's a brilliant hobby. And I say that as a cyclist. But the thing is, it's actually enabling people to ride motorcycles responsibly on the road and off-road, and we need that expression of the hobby. It's stopping people ride them irresponsibly up roads, the canal, and over the mountain. Now, we've had history in Cwmbran of that. You've got it up here. And I mean, one of the other problems is you've got it cross-boundary. You've got it cross-boundary in Torfaen between the various police force areas. You've got it cross-boundary between Monmouthshire and Blaenau Gwent, and I think what we're highlighting here is the fact that we have new people come in, new inspectors. Cwmbran is a good example because they go through there about every year. My colleague in the council will say this, and you've also got new people yourself. You set new projects up. We've got a lot of history on it, and I think what we need is some sort of consistent approach to this. Is what we seem to be talking about. Good luck to the project. It sounds brilliant, but we've seen this all before, and we need a consistent approach again.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the nature of policing is that we move. You know, there's no getting away from that, and that's why the operation that I've created is from learning from the past ones. This is a new one that I haven't had to do a lot of change in. I think, personally, the high visibility approach is the best approach because it seems to have results. They know we're out there and they know not to come on our roads. That is ultimately what we want. And I think that's why I said the conclusion of this, I will be doing a summary so that if I'm around next year, I'll pick it up again. If somebody else does it, they can pick up the summary and move on from it. So at least we get consistency from that point of view. I can't sit here and say, you know, it'll be the same crew looking at it in the next 10 years because that's just not realistic. But that's the best I can do, really.
Councillor Barnett.
Thank you for your report. Like many of the members have spoken, I represent a ward that is plagued with mountain off-biking. I'm a firm believer, though, that prevention is better than cure. Are you still continuing with a programme to get young people in particular to be aware of the dangers and penalties of off-bike riding with our community safety teams, education teams in schools, colleges, youth forum, youth clubs, and indeed with an older generation?
I mean, that is another avenue for the operation to look at. At this moment in time, we're not, because we're looking at the offences. We're trying to get it across that you're not to be riding on our roads on uninsured bikes. I know Inspector Blakemore, who's no longer at Pontypool, unfortunately recently left, he was very up on exactly what you've described there. And he did get the ball rolling to do some multi-agency work with it, which I'm still in the process of doing. It's obviously a massive job. I've had to do this, get this in place first of all, and I think it'll be it's the natural progression. As you say, prevention is better. If we can stop them and make them think about what they're doing, then we won't have to be taking their bikes and crushing them. But at this moment in time, that's in its infancy, and it would be untrue of me to say anything different.
Councillor Jeffries.
I find myself in agreement with Councillor Lewis-Jones. It is a big problem with the Labour government that they're often providing short-term funding, and when that funding ends up, local government ends up having to carry the can. We are fortunate in having the leader of the Welsh Local Government Association as leader of the council. I know he has the ear of the Welsh Government at the moment, so perhaps he could take that forward and ask him about giving a guarantee of longer-term funding in general for all kinds of projects in local government.
Yeah, if I can just touch on that. Obviously, Rob Maddox was funded. I mean, funding's nothing over my head, as it were. But all I would say is if another position became available, I don't think there'd be a shortage of officers that would offer to do that role.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, PC Stockwell, for your report. I was rather concerned when you said that you wouldn't be pursuing these people off-road. Now, I know that the Gwent Police did have a number of off-road bikes, and are these why can't these be used to pursue these people? Because these people that we do not catch go around and then it becomes a badge of honour with them. I've got away with it. So could I ask you to comment on that, please?
Yeah, basically the off-road bike section was disbanded last year, so we don't have one. Obviously I can't say any more than that because I don't know any more than that.
Okay. Leader?
I might follow you then. Let me just put this into some sort of historical context, because there is a reason why we are where we are. With the Forgotten Landscapes, which I think was about 6 years ago, £2 million, the Forgotten Landscapes project, I think it was a lottery-funded project, was about bringing the heather back in Blenavon, or reintroducing wild birds to there, like grouse and various other things. But there was also an element in there to fund a person to manage it. Now, this problem is in Newport, in 14 Locks. It's in Risca, where they ride the bikes. It's in Ebervale. It's in all the valleys, and the mountain is getting ruined. Now, what we done with that lottery-funded project was that the person we employed, and you are right, Rob Maddox, the inspector, was involved in this. But they set up a network, then you've probably taken on that in a new form, I suspect. But there was money, and Rob Maddox put the salary of a policeman into this to work in Torvine. And what happened during that period was that all the bikers went to Ebervale and various other places. They got out of Torvine because there was a system in operation that actually managed it and looked after it and kept them out. Now, I went to speak on 3 occasions in the other valleys to groups to try and set them up to do the same as we were doing. Now, what had happened is that lottery funding has run out. And so the operation which was in place have collapsed. Now, what we need to do, and I left it in the setting somewhat 18 months ago, I suspect, that our officers were going to link with the other officers, try and see if that network could stay in place. Basically, it's a policeman that makes contacts with all the commoners. Any commoner that lives on the mountain, that sees somebody on a bike, they ring around the different commoners, and they all go to the place where they are. Now, once you've done that over a period of time, they go to another borough to do it, and that's what happens. So we've had peace and quiet, over some period of time, for about 2 or 3 years, whilst that project was in being. That project's now gone. There is no funding to do that. But I don't see why the network links between the different authorities, because when last time I went to speak, that was what was happening. The network links between the 4 or 5 authorities can't stay in place, and we need to make a case, to get, because that's the only way we're going to stop it. You're not going to stop it. If you stop it here, you'll drive it there. Once the money they come back, and that's what goes on year. So it needs to be a collaborative effort between the authorities. And when I was involved in this, and 2 years ago, Newport was in favour of it as well, because they're having the same thing as 14 locks. So every local authority have got a problem with bikers ruining their common roads by taking 4x4s up there and motorbikes. I take the point that Gwynaida Clark made about, these people should have somewhere to ride their bikes. It's something which we need to look at, but we need to do it with all the other authorities in South East Wales and all do it together.
Okay, we've got one more member, Councillor Waite, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's more or less a point of information. I do know of a legal off-riding cycle track or motorbike track in Caerphilly. It is a legal site where health and safety are a priority. I know that it was closed for a short while for improvements to be made, but it's run by the Innisty Blackwood area. But I'm sure that that would be an opportunity for us to work collaboratively with Caerphilly in setting up a proper cycling track offside mountain, which it seems that they've been doing for a number of years.
Thank you, Councillor Waite. Thank you, members, and thank you,
Madam Mayor, one point I want to make. Can we ask our officers to come back with a report and tell us how they're linking up with the local authorities and some ideas about how we could fund something or make the argument a case?
Right. Okay, Councillor Mason.
There's a couple of things I agree with Gwynaida. I don't agree with the leader on his, where he say we're going to stop it. It'll never stop. Until we come with a different, new approach totally, it'll carry on because there's legal bikers and there's illegal bikers. So, and I think some of the cost of the police to deal with it shouldn't be happening. Like the air ambulance that they had up the Ghan, where they had to pick a person up, where they cut their head in half and gone as well. A little bit what Neil just said, where we need to copy Caerphilly, what Caerphilly have done over there. I know they got other issues, but we've got to find a new approach to it, because this using police time to bother with that, I think we need to change. That's what I think. And this has been going on for like 40, 50 years. I know it. So it's got to be something completely different, or we're just chasing fairies. Thank you.
Okay. Right, thank you, Councillor Mason. Maybe we can ask officers to bring back a report. Thank you, PC Stockwin. You can stay if you want to, but I'm sure we'll understand if you have other pressing engagements or matters to attend to. We move. Agenda item 12, Torvine Education Recovery Board. Can I ask Joyce Redfern of the Education Recovery Board, would you like to come and give us your update, please?
All right, now it's on. Can you hear me now? Good. I'm really pleased to speak with Council, but also take your questions afterwards around the Recovery Board. As Madam Mayor said, I am the chair now of the Recovery Board. My name is Joyce Redfern, and I've enjoyed the privilege of working with you since January here in Torvine in terms of the work of the board. What I want to do this morning, if I may, is just actually make sure, I know many members I've met and know the story, but I think it is worth just refreshing why the Recovery Board is here and just putting it into a slightly longer term perspective. Essentially, the story does start quite some time ago with an Estin inspection of Torvine in October 2011. And basically, they identified that Torvine required significant improvement at that stage. And then the Estin approach is to come back and monitor that finding, and it was actually over a year that they came back in February 2013. And at that point, they ruled that the authority had made limited progress, that improvements have been slow and standards in secondary schools remain unsatisfactory, that greater change and pace are required in order to bring about further improvement, and that the authority does not identify clearly for schools, for managers and for yourself elected members the extent of the improvement required, and that actually it had taken too narrow a focus. Estin leave with a set of recommendations, but what actually had happened is that Torvine had perhaps narrowly focused on just those recommendations rather than the underlying issues and causes of that performance, and therefore did not give confidence that they would be able to make, in their own right, sustainable improvement at a pace that was required. And so basically in October 2013, there was a direction by the Deputy Minister for Skills and Technology, and that set up the Recovery Board, the Torvine Recovery Board. And its terms of reference are set out in that document. And really the role of the board, this board, is about support and challenge. There are other models in existence where actually some of the functions of the authority in terms of education have been moved to the board. That is not the position in Torvine. With Torvine, we're here to support and challenge, and you continue to run and be responsible for the education services within Torvine. Basically, what we want to see, and I think the we is both the Recovery Board, Torvine, its partners and its schools, and that comes through very, very strongly, is improved outcomes in short order for children and young people. And it's about their educational attainment, but it is about their well-being, and it is about maintaining the good reputation on safeguarding as well. So I think it's a holistic view around children and young people that we're needing to take. So basically, what I think the big message as the Welsh Government set up the Recovery Board is not to just focus on the recommendations from the Estin report, but to actually take a broad view, as I've been describing, around the well-being of children and young people, and to actually make sure that there is a pace and a challenge within the system that will require all of you as elected members in your roles as governors, as local councillors, to actually challenge the performance that is going on at the local level within your schools and make sure that actually you are offering the best to children and young people. So the Recovery Board, as I mentioned, has now met 3 times, first time in January, and then has had 3 further meetings. Those were actually, the first 3 meetings were chaired by representatives from the Welsh Government, so Welsh Government officials. And I think that what we did at the beginning was to meet many people so that there could be a building of a good relationship between the members of the board, many of whom are educational experts, or myself have a long-standing background in both improvement and local government, a fellow sort of strategic director from a very successful authority in Wales. So there's a real range of talent in terms of the people who are coming in. And in that role, we do want to support. And by building good relations with people, political level, obviously starting with the leader of the council, but through the portfolio holder then and the new portfolio holder for the service, and through the chair of scrutiny, there is an elected member who also can build those relationships and partner up. At the officer level, obviously, I've mentioned that there are several of us working with the Chief Executive, the Assistant Chief Executive, and with the Chief Education Officer to try to actually work and support. But the board together will also challenge. I think we can't describe this as a cosy arrangement, and I think many who've had the conversations with us, we do ask some of the probing questions about who, why, what, when, and how are you going to make the improvements happen and happen at pace. So each time the board meets, there is an agreement around some of the key messages from it, and those go in a report that was written by my colleague to the Deputy Minister every quarter. And her report from the first quarter was that she had seen under the leadership of the leader and the chief executive changes happening within Torvine, and that there is actually an improvement partnership plan with the local authority generated with them and with partners within Torvine to actually look at how we progress and how the improvements could be made. I think that she also noted that, politically and managerially, changes have been made, and that is about building and adding the capacity. And it's about building and adding that capacity over a medium term, so that the people who are there leading it now will be the people leading it in a year, 2 years' time. And that will give you sustainability of those actually engaged, carrying this agenda forward, because it is their responsibility to make it happen. I think that she also saw that the changes in the partnership scene were going to be extremely helpful in terms of making sure that there's an alignment, lots of good things happening, but down separate organisations and separate channels. So if you're the young person receiving the service, it doesn't feel necessarily joined up or timely or the appropriate. And so actually developing the Children and Young People's Improvement Board to actually be a challenge as well as a support internally, and to be a sister board to the Recovery Board. So eventually, as the Recovery Board fades away because it's not needed anymore, because the performance has been delivered in Torvine, there will actually still be an ongoing partner board challenging that performance, talking about it, surfacing the issues, then actually the current issues for you within Torvine. At the last meeting in June, I was appointed as the chair in June, and we really did have a very challenging meeting, and one where I think there was a lot that showed green shoots of improvement, and I don't want to overstate it, and I don't want to understate it. I want to be fair to Torvine. But we were able, and it was presented to us by the Chief Executive and the Assistant Chief Executive in terms of the progress that can be demonstrated. And that was around many of the things I've already mentioned, but it was also moving that partnership plan on. It was about challenging actually whether it was going to get us there, whether it was going fast enough, whether actually we could see that the actions resulted in the outcomes that people were searching for, as opposed to have we done something? Have we done something that had the effect that we wanted? I think was a really important part of that conversation. And I think there was a lot of testing of your planning system, and I think some really positive messages around how important this children and young people's achievement agenda is within Torvine. So that the LSB had actually made it its priority, but you could see the golden threads from that partnership level across the whole of Torvine working through and down to individual officers' responsibilities and objectives, but also the contract and the partnership with EAS, who are to provide the school improvement service. And I think we had some really good debates about what that contract with EAS needs to look like, and some challenge around what Torvine wanted from that relationship, getting the general benefit of working as part of a broader regional setup, but tailoring it to individual schools and understanding what was needed for individual schools to improve. We also heard that you've made an appointment to the head of school improvement in a commissioning role, so that Torvine owns the improvement of its schools and has the necessary capacity and resource to actually lead and challenge that on behalf of schools within the borough. I think the other big message was around Estin coming to visit. Now, Estin will come back, and through the year, this year and next, we'll be doing monitoring visits to actually look at progress. You don't ever get whatever they look at signed off. Let me be really clear. You can't bank it. But what they do is do a progress report that says, how are things going? And they came and had a look at the NEAT performance. And I'm not sure if the formal letter was not available at the meeting, okay, but the messages from it was certainly very positive feedback in terms of actually a good start having been made. And I think some of the statistics bearing that out in terms of the performance for NEATs, and that is in a partnership setting. But also what was really persuasive is when they come back next, they will want to see significant further progress as well, even though it's a good start. And that's very much what we heard. Not we're resting on what we've done, but actually we're challenging ourselves to look at some of the other categories and to move on. I think the last sort of significant issue that I want to share from the last meeting, and probably because it felt like it really began to address some of those challenges about really becoming self-critical within Torvine and self-aware within Torvine, was actually a debate that took place with head teachers. We've several head teacher representatives for the first time joining us at the meeting. And it was very powerful that the Estin recommendation is about secondary school performance in the detail, and I completely understand as chair why politically, with real passion from your portfolio holders, you focused on Key Stage 4 and improving Key Stage 4. But bubbling underneath, although your primary performance results have always looked reasonable, has been a story that says, but actually there's a gap. When people move from primary schools into secondary schools, that's not the performance standard we see. That's not what they actually achieve, and that's been fed back to us by parents, it's been fed back to us by teachers, it's been fed back to us by head teachers. It was picked up by the Chief Education Officer as a challenge in the system and supported by senior management, but also by the portfolio holder, that actually we should open up the debate about whether the performance data is consistent, is accurate, and is comparable in terms of across Wales in setting a real benchmark of what is happening currently within primary schools in Torvine. And quite honestly, as a member of a recovery board, it was a great privilege to actually be there watching Torvine politically, managerially, and with head teachers actually tackling what has been a conversation under people's voices sort of quietly for the whole time I've been here, but actually being brave about surfacing that and wanting to explore how you get the right start point for the improvements that then need to flow in terms of the primaries. And it was a very different era. I think the Chief Executive described it as a different era of a relationship with the head teachers, so that actually each should understand better where each was coming from and what was going to be needed. And actually I think it's been very persuasive that you are tackling those underlying issues. With all change management, it does mean that there's likely to be a dip in performance. So things feel like they're getting worse as you go into a change curve very frequently, and that may well be reflected in your primary performance reporting, but it gives you firm foundations for then moving forward and tackling the issues at the right stage and at the right time to give you a sustainable ability to show improvement in primary and therefore in secondary as those pupils move through. So the board is at its early stages. We are supportive, but we are creating a challenging environment. It won't all feel better straight away because we will dig, but we will also support you in digging, which is, I think, what we saw happening in the last meeting, down to the real issues for Torvine and surfacing those issues. So there's a large amount still to do. The pace question is still a really key question, that actually there is something that Estin will want to see gathering momentum. But I think that one of the things that you cannot fail but to admire and appreciate is, whether it's the leader and the chief executive, or it's the portfolio holder with the assistant chief executive and the chief executive education officer, the governors or the head teachers, the chair of scrutiny, you are all committed to actually moving forward and bringing about improvement for children and young people. So thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Karen?
Thank you.
Oh, it is now. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. You've made comments about that move from primary to secondary, and the attainment levels when they leave primary don't seem to be the same as when they reach secondary. I'm just wondering if that's more prevalent in Torvine than it is anywhere, because one of the things that I get from primary heads about this issue is that there's an 8-week gap between when they leave us and when they get, and the little darlings forget things. You know, how prevalent do you think it is to Torvine rather than nationwide?
I can't give you precise data, but I think that we're talking about something that head teachers raised as being a more substantial issue than just from when they finish primary school to when they start. And certainly some of the conversations that I've had have been about parents almost at further key stages finding out that what was their child's assessment as they left primary school is not borne out by the results that they get at Key Stage 3 or the predicted grades at Key Stage 4. So you do have what would seem to be, and has been described in much of the literature, a significant gap between the level at which you're saying children leave primary school in terms of their attainment and then their individual pupil performance when you track them through in terms of the later stages. And that actually is part of the debate that certainly would seem in Torvine to have, that gap would seem to have been a greater one than in the majority of other authorities. So in a sense, you're falling into the trap of promising that you'll have higher performance than actually your secondary schools are able to deliver with that cohort of pupils. So it's a really important fundamental debate about, making sure that we get it right. And I'm not saying that I know the answer to that. And I think that part of what was good to see is that needs to be talked through with head teachers. Actually, the way forward needs to be developed. And it is that, what are we seeing in the landscape? What are we understanding? Are we actually challenging each other? And then once we've identified what the real issues are, then we'll come to an agreed way of actually making sure we've got a better base on performance as young people leave primary school.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple of questions. Thank you for your presentation. Firstly, what is your confidence that the EAS has the capacity to deliver on its part of the bargain? I think it's working with, 5 local authorities now. How confident are you that it will not become overstretched and therefore itself fail to do what it's meant to be doing? And the other question I'd like to put, your experience of turning around organisations or what have you in this kind of situation, is there any pattern that you can observe whereby you get a better result on turnaround with a completely new set of people in charge or with some of the same people still in charge? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. In terms of the EAS, it is still early days, but the pressure is very much on them because within this region there are 3 authorities who are all in similar or worse positions than Torvine in terms of education service performance. So I think that the need for a strong commissioner has been recognised, and I think that that is really important so that Torvine, with its neighbouring authorities, do set a standard for EAS in terms of the school improvement service and are very clear about the expectations of what they will do and how they will assist. I think the other thing that is powerful is that head teachers themselves are going to be involved in that contracting process. I think because it's new, there is still some lack of clarity about who does what or how well it can be done. And I think that, like all of these things, it becomes a discipline of saying, we wanted, you did, this happened. And you need to keep reviewing whether the actions are resulting and testing whether actually that school improvement service is helping the schools to deliver the outcomes that you want, and that the schools are judging that, you are judging that as a local authority, and actually, there is support and development and challenge for them. It's too early to give you an absolute answer on your question. But I do think it is of central importance in terms of the new national model that actually we make these bodies effective in actually learning and sharing best practice. Right at the heart of that, of course, will be school-to-school support. So actually, one of the things they'll be doing is working with the best of your schools to actually understand how you get the learning from peer to peer. And that actually takes me into part of the next answer. Improvement often is done best when people stop denying the problem. So it's not changing personnel, though that does happen in some improvement situations, but it is about recognising where you're starting from and making realistic plans and putting in the capacity. And quite honestly, having the bravery that I've seen Torvine display in the last meeting at the political level, at a managerial level, to actually go through some of those very tough times. Because you will be talking about things that actually it would be easier to just leave that, nice calm surface rather than digging beneath for the information and the real issues. So it is done in some places, and some of the English model has had that, removing people. It is about actually accepting the issues and finding the solutions. And I genuinely believe that the solutions are here. You just need to bring them in and link them together and challenge each other to make sure that the delivery happens.
Thank you, Councillor Rees.
Thanks. You mentioned you had a meeting with the senior managers and head teachers. Did the primary school head teachers, or I'm assuming we're at this meeting, agree with the analysis that the levels that they were suggesting children could attain when they went on to secondary? Did they agree that those weren't correct?
The conversation started in a snowball from actually one of the head teachers of the primary school raising the issue and actually commenting about wanting a safer database, really, in terms of performance. But it was then actually quite powerful because it got echoed at the managerial level and about actually how do we make this consistent, and the portfolio holder was there actually also supporting that conversation and actually commenting about what would be best for children and young people.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and keep it as soft as I can, but I don't believe that there should be any failing whatsoever in education. Everybody should be exactly the same right throughout. There should be no difference between one school and another school. What I find the difference with schools today, 2014, we should be up with the best, is, I'll try and keep it fair, is the balance of teachers, where there's a lot more female teachers than male teachers. And I think that balance needs to be right, so to try and keep it fair. But I don't think Torfaen shouldn't have been put in special measures in 2014. We all should be at the same level with education. So I'm trying to say there's something wrong totally with education. How are we going to put it right? I don't know. And I think the experts out there are just doing similar to what we've done with the police, is trying to get little shoots, but not solve the problem. Thank you.
I think there's a big challenge back that actually if you look at relative to other places, your performance in terms of the outcomes for young people in educational services, you are not delivering in the same way as some other authorities within Wales. And that was true when Estyn came, and the improvement has been very slow since they were here, which is why clearly I know there was a big debate about whether there should or should not be a recovery board. In a sense, that's water under the bridge. The real issue now for you as members of the council is to make sure that your utopian position, that every child within Torfaen gets the education that is the best and that they can make the best of themselves. And I'm afraid I am going to be challenging. I mean, I've met many teachers. Teachers do make the difference. We all tell the stories, don't we, of the inspiring teacher, the one, who made a difference in our life. I've never found gender to actually be the issue. It's competence. It's how good a teacher you are, how inspiring a teacher, what you bring to that role, and whether you actually put your heart and soul into the inspiring of the young people and creating their future. So we will agree to differ. You were very gentlemanly in the way that you put it, but we're going to agree to differ.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank you for the comprehensive presentation and the update. It's been very informative. It's brought out a couple of interesting points, especially about the attainment gap that you mentioned. I'm on the board of school governors in a primary school, and it seems to be a very good one. And they're constantly talking about the improvements that they've made in standards. But there does seem to be an attainment gap, and that's expressed by employers when they're taking on new people. That view has been expressed by universities as well, in terms of the basic standards for what we would call in the old days the 3 Rs, and so that was interesting, and I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a lot of focus on that particular area in terms of improving development and raising standards. I do accept that there was a failing within Torvine. We're not unique in that. As you mentioned, there were other borough councils that had indeed been placed in special measures, and I think there is a problem in Wales. If you look at the PISA analysis, where you look at countries like England, Ireland and Scotland, and they're all within 1 or 2 marks of each other, all around the 22nd position, and Wales coming in at least 20 places behind that in the rankings. For me, it's hard to understand why we should be so far behind England, Ireland and Scotland in terms of those rankings, and I'm wondering whether the broader remit now that the Recovery Board is looking at is going to take into account those rankings and what can be done to improve the educational standards of our 16 and 17-year-olds. So, thank you.
I think you put extremely cogently the arguments that do exist in terms of Welsh education. It's a great sadness for me because my old authority is one of those in special measures as well, because I was chief exec in Monmouthshire, educated my children in the Welsh system, and actually seeing the decline now in terms of the performance standards, I think is heartbreaking in terms of what one would want just to give life choices and chances, as you're talking about, in terms of future employment, further education, etc., for children and young people within Wales. We are working as a recovery board within a context of work that's been done at a national level in terms of developing a national model around education. And obviously there are various initiatives like Challenge Cymru, which will be working with many of the secondary schools within Torvine, where the national context, I think, gives a supportive environment to challenge and move forward on some of the things that did result in that poor OECD report and the PISA report.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
I'd just like to thank Joyce for her report. I think the balance that she strikes between the need for challenge and the need to support is exactly the right one. I think, certainly all the officers and politicians I've worked with here are committed to taking that on and to working with you to really, sort of build a culture of success in our schools that I think we all want for our young people. So I very much welcome that, and I think the way that started is striking that right balance between challenging us and asking us the tough questions that need to be asked, but also supporting us and helping us learn from best practice elsewhere as how we can build to improve those standards. One thing I'm particularly interested in looking forward to working with you and working with my colleague Councillor Yole and working forward on this is how we help foster as much as we can, a spirit of working with the parents and the wider community to improve our school and improve education. In all the sort of successful areas I've seen, there's they've done very good things in helping increase and benefit from parental involvement and from the wider school communities that surround our schools. And I'll just be interested as we work forward in learning in that, but just to welcome the spirit of cooperation and challenge that's there. None of us want to hide from the tough questions that we've got to ask and the journey that we've got to go on, or underestimate the scope of improvement that's needed. But I think from what I've seen, everyone's sort of committed to working together to get where we need to be.
Thank you. Can I bring Councillor Yole in now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Joyce, for saying it as it is. I'm not surprised at that because you've been saying it as it is for some time now. All I would want to say is, in a sense, echoing the sentiments being expressed by Joyce. It has been a painful experience to be sat in on these recovery board meetings, and indeed a recovery board meeting that we had before this more formal process started in more recent weeks, where we met as a cabinet and were told in no uncertain terms what was needed, what was expected, and it wasn't just the recovery board telling us, it was us making our feelings known to the recovery board. But I think the point of contact, and this has always been in existence right through the series of meetings, the point of contact is that we acknowledge that we are in a poor place, and we need to do things differently. We need to work smarter. We need to realise the mountain that has to be climbed, and we need, and it was difficult for us, and certainly difficult for me to grasp this when it's important for us to see the recovery board as a support mechanism, not an enemy. And I say that with all honesty. It was a difficult thing for me to get my head around, but I think I've got it now. And I would just like to say that the meetings that we've had so far have been productive. They've been heated at times. It hasn't all been one-way traffic. There is a degree of digging heels in at some pronouncements and some ideas coming from the Recovery Board. And indeed, more than one of the Recovery Board members, even when they say something nice about what we are doing, adds the appendage that, of course, this comes with a health warning. So there is always a reminder that whilst there are green shoots, there's a hell of a lot of work to do yet, and we are at the start of the process rather than getting towards the end. But I'm encouraged by the positive remarks made by both Joyce and other members of the Recovery Board in the 3 meetings that I've attended so far, and I hope that we can work together. I'm sure that we can work together to make some kind of progress, and hopefully we can see some light at the end of the tunnel sooner rather than later. But once again, thanks for turning up. Joyce, it can't be an easy experience for you to come here and tell people, especially people who are hearing this message for the first time, that not all is right in the garden of education in Torfaen. But we are getting there. We are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Councillor Yule. We've got Pam Cameron and then Councillor Wellington, and then we're going to have to move on. Okay.
Madam Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. It was really informative. I'd like your comments, really. Like you, I'm saddened that Wales is seen, it appears to be seen as being an inferior education system. And I'd just like your comments on the fact that some of the private schools now have actually announced, it was on the news this morning, that they are going to switch over to the English curriculum. Do we actually compare that, and what would be your comments about that?
You're taking me into dangerous territory as an apolitical office holder, and I don't want to transgress, because I will have a personal value set about some of the choices that you would want to see. I think it is hard to explain why there has been the deterioration, and it is something, because I sat on the National Expert Group where we tried to do a bit of that analysis. In a sense, I think we ended up thinking about how do you turn this around, and that felt much more important to spend the time and the energy. You have to know what the issue and the problem is, and actually the results and the performance of young people is starkly, whether you use PISA, whether you use your own key stages, out of step with where you would want to be. You've got many factors that are positive. You actually have, less divergence in comprehensives and in the standards that they deliver. And, if you look at England, it's very polarised in terms of some of the comprehensive school performance. You also have a more substantial group educated in the state system rather than in private schools. So I'm not going to get drawn, if you don't mind, into commenting on, perhaps privately and personally, but probably not in this role in terms of, but they are important issues. In a sense, it is about grabbing and making the climate here one, and I think, you know, with public and parents' participation that values education. Because having served as Wigan's chief exec, that certainly wasn't true for all our community. It was for many, but it wasn't for all. And that actually, you know, you really work at making sure that you're giving young people the best and most positive start. And I think with all of your energy and the parents harnessed, you can make a real difference here in Torvine.
Okay, thank you. Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I also welcome your report, excellent report. We've been going now for a short while, but what has come back from that recovery board is that you're described as firm but fair and a no-nonsense chairman, which I think is a good thing. That's the very thing we actually need, actually. And I think that members have said that the very positive attitude that you bring to the board is encouraging, and members are pleased that you were there. We will obviously, I'm assuming, have a number of reports like this over the coming years where we can, you know, measure the success that we've had. I should have said in the beginning, I don't think all members realise that Joyce is the former chief executive of Gwent County Council, and then moved away up Monmouthshire. Monmouthshire, that's even back further. That's right. And then moved away and has now come back to assist us. And the reports I'm having back is that everybody is encouraged by the whole approach that you're adopting. As I said, firm but fair, wanting results, and that's first class. That's the very thing we want, because we don't like being in special measures. So we're very encouraged that you are in the chair and driving us forward.
Okay, members, we're going to have to move on now. Councillor Seaborn, you haven't spoken, so... Oh, sorry, Joyce. Right, okay, I'm going to close the debate down now, sorry, okay. Thank you, Joyce. Going to move on to agenda item 13, the annual improvement report. There's Non Jenkins of the Welsh Audit Office. Come down and present your report.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, bore da. I'm not going to take you through the whole of our annual improvement report. I'm assuming you will have read it all and every word, each and every word. But much in the same vein, really, as Joyce set out earlier, you'll see the same messages coming through in the annual improvement report. Now, just to put the annual improvement report in context, again, it's a summary of our work as regulators and inspectorates over the last year. So what you are seeing in front of you, actually you will have seen most of it before. It's basically a summary of everything that we've done and pulling messages out of that. Now, you'll see it's sort of set out in 4 parts, and I'll go through just quickly the 4 parts. The first part is about your outcomes and performance. In the same, on the same point that Joyce was just making, this is what is the important part. What your processes and arrangements are about are to deliver outcomes. Now, we found, and this is a report on your performance in 2012-13. We haven't yet done the reporting on 2013-14, as you are yet to report also your 13-14 results this October, as your duty is required. So every authority has to do that every October. So this is a commentary on your 12-13 performance. And you'll see in reading it, as well as your own evaluation of performance during that year, that your performance was mixed across the services. Some services better than others, and some areas within services better than others, but generally mixed. Hopefully that gives you a flavour of things that you can report this year, in this October, to say how you have progressed in addressing those. So, in the second part of our report, we looked at your governance and management arrangements to deliver better improvement and strengthen your self-evaluation arrangements so that you are able to deliver better outcomes. And what we were keen to point out and include in our judgment there is that you do recognise that you yourselves need to improve and strengthen this. And this has come out clearly this morning in the debate that you've had, in that you're open, you're more self-aware, that you want to improve, and you are keen to strengthen and improve your arrangements in order to deliver better outcomes. You can see there that you've got sound arrangements in place in preparing your statements of accounts, and that you've discharged your improvement reporting duties. You're strengthening your corporate arrangements for some systems to manage performance, but also know that you need to develop your data quality arrangements so that the data that you are relying on is completely accurate and timely. And also, you recognise yourselves that you needed to improve your self-evaluation arrangements, and you're working on that at the moment, and we're recognising that here. And then the third part of the report is in terms of how you are planning to improve. Now, we noted that you have a lot of improvement objectives as part of our work last year. The improvement objectives are your priorities for improvement over the year. You have 25 over the course of 3 years. You had 15 to undertake during 13-14. Quite a big ask. It is ambitious, brilliant if you can achieve it, but it's about making sure that you are concentrating on the right things at the right time and are able to deliver what you set out to deliver, and not necessarily raising expectations and being too ambitious in delivering those. So the key issues coming out of that are that you need basically to prioritise your improvements and priorities for improvement, and really use your corporate frameworks that you're developing in order to do that, so such as collaborations, and such as your corporate management framework for monitoring proposals for improvement and recommendations. Now, taken together, our view is, and given also what Joyce has also said, together, at this point in time, we recognise that there are lots going on in the authority, that there is lots of action, that there is lots of activity and lots of changes. But at this point in time, those changes haven't yet shown, at this point in time, the outcomes that you wish to deliver in all of your priorities. And I think it's a matter of timing here. Hopefully by next year you'll be able to show that everything that you are putting in place and the green shoots that are arising at this point in time has borne fruit, and that you can show that it has made a difference. So we made one statutory recommendation during the year, which we talked about at a previous meeting in terms of data quality. So really, to summarise, we realise that some of these conclusions may be a bit, you might find them a bit harsh, but we know that you also are becoming more self-aware and challenging of yourselves in order to drive improvement. And we know that you're as keen as us to see that the outcomes from the changes that you are making are actually making a difference and are delivering better services. So, and we also recognise that it's a difficult time for local government and public services as a whole during this time, during the last period, and also ongoing. It's going to look quite an interesting period in local government. But we also can see that you're self-aware and you're committed to driving this and addressing the issues that we are raising, as well as Estyn and CSSIW. As I said, lots of changes, lots of activity. It's a kind of prove-it time now. This year is the prove-it time in order to see how everything that you are putting in place, how the self-awareness, how the activity and changes you're making are making a difference, making those green shoots turn into flowers, trees to take on the analogy. And at a pace too. So as Joyce said, it's too early to tell whether what you have put in place will make a difference. And it's for you to be able to demonstrate that. And hopefully that can be done this year, and we can reflect it in next year's annual improvement report. And I'll leave it there and happy for questions.
Okay, members, going to open it for questions or comments. Councillor Hunt, would you like to come in?
Okay, I'd just like to thank Non Jenkins for the report and for the comments that she's made. As we've just agreed a sort of a transfer of some responsibilities in the previous report that we had delivered by the leader, I think it's right for me to sort of make some comments about our attitude going forward. I welcome the commitment for that same supporting and challenging role that the Recovery Board have demonstrated from the WAO as well, and I look forward to that in the future. I think we've shown this morning that there is a self-awareness of the areas where we need to improve and a determination to make those improvements. I recognise what she says about the timing. Maybe the Recovery Board are more able to comment on green shoots that haven't yet developed into flowers or trees than the Welsh Audit Office is. I also welcome the recognition that she gave in the report of the help we've given to help families and especially the vulnerable through the recession. We recognise, as we've said this morning, that the improvements need to be made in things like education. I think there is a point that needs to be made more generally about the impact of prioritisation. Often, both the Welsh Government and the Audit Office like to comment on the positive side of prioritisation, the need to prioritise. But of course there's also a flip side to that, because by definition if you prioritise certain areas, there will be areas that fall outside of that prioritisation, where you have to at the very least accept that less ambitious targets in terms of improvement, or even that there'll be some things that we can't do the same way, or that we can't do as a council if we are to sufficiently prioritise things like education and things like supporting the vulnerable. So I think that's a point that needs to be made, and that of course is especially true at the moment as we deal with the most sustained squeeze on our resources since this council was formed. And I'm glad that you mentioned the resources issue that councils across the UK are going through. But I really think there's a need to emphasise that going forward to both the Welsh Government and the Audit Office, that we're going to have ever fewer staff, ever less money, and if we're talking in the realms of as was mentioned up at the WLJ conference on Thursday about having English-style financial settlements, it's sometimes unrealistic then to have Welsh Government-style expectations on what we can deliver for that money. And we need to look, I think, far more flexibly about how we try to deliver with increasingly tight budgets, especially outside areas of schools and social care where we've tried to prioritise, quite rightly, I think. But as I say, both in terms of resources and in terms of improvement, you can only prioritise so much. For example, if you prioritise schools and social care to protect them from budget cuts, you're left with under a half of the money left that 100% of the cuts need to be made from. And I think in those areas especially, we have to have a realistic view of what we can do in terms of improvement and what we can deliver in terms of a council if we're to prioritise those key areas.
Any other members? Councillor Haynes?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I do look forward to yours every year. You say that we are self-aware in driving change. I've sort of heard that a few years running off yourselves now. But more interestingly, you say that next year is the prove it year. And that's pretty much the first time I recall hearing that sort of strength there. So I think just a quick comment really is that it seems that the political leaders and councillors here, we have a much bigger job ahead of us to prove it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. That is in particular relation to really the pace of change, also reflecting what Joyce said earlier in terms of there are green shoots, there are a mixture of performance where you are good in some areas, not so good in others. It's about turning around those elements and priorities where you have set yourselves and increasing the pace on those to a point where you set out where you wanted to achieve, that you actually are achieving what you set out to achieve. So it's the pace behind it.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for the very detailed and comprehensive report. This and the previous agenda item on the Recovery Board, it might sound a bit strange, but to me there's a strangely optimistic flavour that comes from those. And what that is this. I've sat here for a number of years, and in the past, people have said, oh, everything's going great, isn't it fantastic? Now, when we get given tough messages, councillors, members, more parties sit here and nod and are thoughtful and listen and take in what's said to them, and it actually seems to be soaking in. So I think actually now, if there was a tipping point, we've passed the tipping point. The tipping point was when people were prepared to say, do you know what, things ain't wonderful here, and we are going to sort it. Now, I know I moan about the administration, it kind of goes with the job, really, but I'm really enthusiastic to see this council do better, to deliver better, to be more ambitious, and to do a better job. And I'm absolutely delighted that members from around this chamber are really now looking the issue square in the eye. And I think that bodes very, very well, actually. Councillor Hunt's absolutely right. You know, times are really tough. There'll never be piles of money. So it's always going to be a case of making the best with the limited resources as we will always have. But I think now that there seems to be a really realistic acceptance of the situation we find ourselves in, that is a springboard to really change things, turn things around, improve things, make things better, and make the best possible result we can with the resource we have. So I don't think that hearing tough messages from people coming from outside this council is a bad thing. It is a good thing, provided we absorb them, we understand them, we're thoughtful about them, and then we do something about them. So, thank you for coming here and saying some good things and saying some tough things to us, because that's the only way we're going to get better.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Yeah, just to sort of clarify in layman's terms, if I understand, in summary you said that taking the above into account, the Auditor General believes that it is uncertain whether the Council is likely to make arrangements to secure a continuous improvement for 2014-15. And the message I'm sort of getting is that is because things are, the organisation structure here is changing, and that's the reason why you're uncertain about how things are going to turn out, in layman's terms. Is that where we are?
Given what we set out in the report, given the mixed performance, the areas of governance and arrangements that you are strengthening, as well as the issues in terms of that you recognise you need to prioritise and plan improvement better, all of that together, as well as the situation in terms of your rest and recovery, it's too early to tell. We're not sure whether the arrangements, whether the changes, whether the activity that you are undertaking at this point in time, it's not yet tested whether that will or will not deliver. You yourselves are not at a point in time yet to be able to show that either, because of the time of the period that you are in. Hopefully in 6 months, when Essen has been here also, you will be able to say, well, all of the changes, yes, are delivering outcomes. But at this point in time, it is uncertain whether they will or won't deliver.
Okay. Thank you, members. No further comments? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Non, for a very interesting audit report yet again. There are some things in there that are a little bit concerning in my view. One of them is the housing benefit, where there's a mixed picture there. Critical that we get this right for our residents. And the other one is, I'm a little bit surprised to see this, is in regard to the waste and the information that's given to our service users. That is another critical area we need to get right, as we are directed from the Welsh Government to improve our waste recycling targets in the future. So I'm glad that you've commented on those both items. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Non. Members, the recommendations are on page 53 of your agenda. Can I have a show of hands, please? Anybody for? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay. Thank you, members. The recommendations are agreed. Thank you, Norm. Move to agenda item 14, the Council's forward-facing improvement plan. Chief Executive, can you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report actually flows very well on from both Non's and Joyce's comments, because I do want to preface this report by saying that we are in an era now where we just need to have fewer priorities and objectives if we are going to be able to deliver. We have tried, I think, as hard as we can to keep on doing everything for everyone all the time for quite a few years now. And there are two reasons, I think, why that can't continue, and that means some difficult political choices. The first one is the budget situation. We have done everything we can to manage our budget over the last few years in a situation of declining resources, by protecting jobs, by protecting services, by trimming the fat off the bone wherever we can. The fat's gone off the bone now, and the next budget round is going to be a more difficult one than members have ever seen. So I think for that reason alone we have to think about our priorities and how many we can realistically keep. The other one is working with the Recovery Board, and I think you can see from the presentation from Joyce that that's a very productive, if challenging, relationship. And one of the messages I've taken from the Recovery Board, certainly very strongly, has been if you want to really improve something, you have to really focus on it. And if you're really going to focus on it, you can't be doing everything else at the same time as well. So for those two reasons, I just wanted to make those comments to preface taking members through the report, because this is about the 2014-15 forward-facing improvement plan. So this is about how we are going to set our objectives and prioritise going forward. We're required to publish an annual plan, and we have to agree improvement objectives for the year ahead when we publish that plan. And when we're doing that, we need to take into account the budget situation, as I've said, our medium-term financial plan, the service plans within our service areas. So it's really important that we get this plan right, and of course we will report to our citizens in October 2015 on this plan and on the previous plan in October of this year. And it is a bit confusing, I think, listening to when the Wales Audit Office give their report, no disrespect to them, but the system means that they are reporting on performance that's already over a year old by the time you hear it. So this is the important plan for me, the one going ahead. So what do we need to focus on? Well, we need to focus on the main short-term issues that over the next year we want to improve on. And you'll see at 5.2 in the report, there's a list of things we have to do when we're deciding what those objectives are. So there must be at least a focus on one of these things, either strategic effectiveness, service quality, service availability, reducing disadvantage, sustainability, efficiency or innovation. And every objective has to be tested, if you like, against those. Now, the Wales Audit Office quite rightly will tell us we must sustain continuous improvement across our council services. I think that's going to be increasingly difficult to do with the financial situation we're facing. And I know when the leader made his speech at the WLGA conference last week, one of the things he said was, this is very easy managerial speak, isn't it? We must have continuous improvement. But what does that mean in a situation where you can't improve everything when you're not putting resources into everything? So what we need to do in this plan is to refine down the 25 outcome statements that were in your second corporate plan in 2011 to say what ones do we want to focus upon given what's affordable and what's relevant to our citizens. We've decided, subject to members' agreement, taking into account the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee in February of this year, to recommend to members that there would be 10 objectives that we would focus on in this plan. Those are set out at page 104 of your agenda. There's 10 of them. I'm sure you've looked at them already. 5 around schools, 4 around social care and 1 around waste. And it is strongly recommended to members that that is where you focus your improvement journey over the next 12 months. It mirrors decisions taken around the budget for this year. It mirrors the policy direction of Welsh Government, which is around protecting education, social care, and setting increasingly challenging targets around recycling and waste. It doesn't mean that we should give up on improving any other services in the Council. Of course not. Officers across the Council, with their executive members, will strive to deliver improvement, but it does mean we have to be realistic about how much improvement we can expect in those areas of service that are not going to be subject to this forward-facing plan in terms of the 10 priorities. So, members, I'm sure you've read the draft plan, and I'm asking you to approve those objectives for the coming year. Thank you.
Any members got any comments? Councillor Bevan.
Yes, thank you for the Chief Exec for presenting the report. It was just a quick question, really. I wondered whether there would be any further submission, given that we've only just had the recent announcement of the allocation of additional funding from the Welsh Assembly Government surrounding regeneration, and I wondered whether the report would be further amended. Obviously, I accept that that decision has just been made, and timing-wise, it wouldn't have been included in the report, but I'm just wondering, going forward, will there be further amendments to this report to incorporate what we're going to do to spend this additional monies?
I think we need to agree a forward-facing plan today, and for that to be the plan, I don't think we can keep on taking it back and amending it through the year. And I don't think the addition of money in a particular area from the Welsh Government would necessarily change what members would want to be their priorities. But obviously, if we do have money in a certain area, it is important that we make sure that we spend that money effectively. And sometimes there are issues around match funding, for example, where we get money, but we then have to move money from somewhere else in order to match funds. So no, I don't think we would change the plan, because there would always be things coming in which would mean that we would want to adjust the plan. But certainly, if there's an opportunity to spend money, then we would want to make sure that we put the resources in to be able to spend that money effectively.
Leader?
Can I just say that the majority party discussed this last night, and we'll be looking for a half-a-day seminar, like we had in the beginning when we set up the corporate plan, so that members' views can be taken on board.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's unfortunate that we have to amend our 15 objectives, obviously, but I think some of the objectives just contained in the 10 objectives are overarching as well. So I've got no real concern about it, other than that we've had to come to this stage, really.
Okay. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, it's difficult to argue with the 10 objectives that are put forward. I think members would agree that providing the best possible future for our children is of tremendous importance, and protecting vulnerable adults through social care is equally tremendously important. And obviously, we cannot afford to be stung by fines due to failure to achieve recycling targets. So, in the circumstances we find ourselves, it's difficult to think that this is anything but a reasonable, workmanlike approach, I think.
Thank you. Okay, members, the recommendations are shown on page 98 of your agenda. We are asked to approve the forward-facing plan. Can I have a show of hands, please? Everyone for? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Councillor Morby?
I'm not abstaining. Further recommendation, though, which I'd like Council to adopt, and that is that we, as the leader has suggested, have a seminar on this topic at the earliest opportunity, not to change what we've already discussed, but in order to ensure that members are aware of the importance of and the implications of the forward-facing plan as now approved, because there will still be decisions which need to be taken, maybe at executive member level, and we need to make sure that members are fully informed of all the issues and implications of those. So it's an additional recommendation to the report that we have the seminar as suggested as quickly as possible.
Councillor Morby, I think we've taken the vote, so it's a bit late to raise an amendment, but I'll certainly undertake to members to arrange a seminar.
Well, with respect, Chief Executive, you didn't respond to the suggestion from the leader that there should be a seminar. I'd rather hope that that would have been done. But having an additional recommendation, I don't think, is outside the rules of debate.
Councillor Morby, I think the item had ended because you'd taken the vote, but my reading was when the leader made that comment about a seminar that the Chief Executive was nodding and had noted it. So in that respect, the seminar will take ahead.
If we have that assurance, then that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Well, I was just the only point I was making is I've been here for about 6 years now. My understanding has always been that decisions about what we have as a seminar has always been within the gift of the leader. So I was just suggesting we follow that.
That's no problem. No? Okay, right. So, thank you, members. The recommendations are agreed. We'll move on to the next item, agenda item 15, webcasting in Torfaen. Richard Edmonds, Head of Strategic and Democratic Services. Can you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, members. This will be very brief, and it's essentially the next instalment of the webcasting journey. You'll note from the main body of the report that since we started this process back in September, we've now received nearly 20,000 views of our webcast meetings. We're naturally keen to try and extend these arrangements a little bit further, and this report merely seeks Council's approval to webcast all scrutiny, planning and licensing meetings from this point forward. And I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions or comments? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just a few words, because obviously I brought it originally, so I'm a vested interest. Just want to say I'm really pleased to see the recommendations that we expand it, particularly into planning, because I find a lot of the time dealing with constituents that planning regulations are really unclear, so hopefully being able to see meetings in action will unravel some of that. And also, I just want to comment on the number of hits we've had. As I understand it, we're hitting up with Senedd TV, so, you know, that's really good figures. And I think it's going to be good going forward with that level of engagement, not that everyone in Torfaen is watching it, but the trickle-down effect of people talking about it, because, again, with constituents a lot of the time, I'm dealing with dispelling rumours or things they may have heard about services, so it's good to get some official information out there.
Sorry, I didn't hear you then. I think your mic wasn't working at the time. Yes, I endorse what my colleague has just said. I would just like to query, though, because the key message on page 143 included 60 hours of broadcasting. Is that still within this remit, or do we, in fact, need to purchase more?
Is that better? Yeah, as it stands at the moment, we've not used our 60 hours for the first year. If that does increase and we broach the 60 in the coming years, then it's very cost effective to buy an additional 30. I think it costs just less than £1,000 to extend up, so we're pretty comfortable we can cope.
Councillor Kemp.
No, my question was already answered by Councillor Quick.
Okay. Councillor Ashley.
Thank you there. Anecdotal evidence that I trawled around a few people is suggesting, something I thought might happen, is a lot of people, especially some officers, seem to be using audio only, which is, I did sort of suggest that might be something that people did. They don't necessarily want to watch us, but they listen to us. It's something other people are doing. So it'd be interesting if we could capture that data. That's one thing I wanted to suggest, because I suspect that obviously people are keeping informed by what we're doing, which was interesting. The other one, obviously, I'm glad to see that you're suggesting that we do actually broadcast more of the scrutiny, because obviously there's some interesting meaty subjects out there that might be being missed, and that was the other one I would suggest.
Councillor Morby.
Yeah. Just to be absolutely clear, can we have an assurance that when we talk about planning and licensing meetings, we're talking about committee meetings, not panels?
Yes.
Leader.
Yeah, that's, I just want to share some information with members. Out of the 22 authorities in Wales, I think we are leading the field. There are other authorities, one or two, that is webcasting. I better not mention names. But there's one of the largest ones that is not webcasting. They've been doing it for a long time, probably longer than us. And there's another one very near to us that have got all the facilities but are not using them. I had a discussion the day before yesterday. You know, I go all around Wales, I know all what's happening in different council chambers. I've been in every council chamber in Wales on a number of occasions, and I know what systems they got, and I know what mic systems they got, and so on. I had a discussion yesterday with a leader of a West Wales council that is absolutely pulling his hair out about the fact that he has to go through the process of putting webcasting in. Because don't forget, this is a directive of the Assembly. Also, don't forget that the Assembly paid for it. And given that that is the case, I'm going to be asking, because there are lots of members in here, and other members I meet at different times of the week, that are complaining about this mic system. Now, the public are watching us, and it doesn't look very professional, actually, when somebody's got to bang the mic in order to make it work. So I will be asking for a report. I'll be asking for a report on how much money we had from the Assembly to install webcasting, what has it been spent on, and if there is any money left over, we want a new mic system so that people can look as if they know what they're doing when the public are watching.
Councillor Rees.
Yeah, just a few questions about scrutiny committees and webcasting. About 2 months ago, we had a special scrutiny meeting around the potential mergers of Fairwater and Llantarnam School. I thought that should have been webcast. The decision was taken not to do it. If we do have special meetings of scrutiny committees, are those going to be webcast as well? And the other question is, if we do have a subcommittee of a scrutiny committee, is that going to be webcast? I think that they should, if we can afford it.
Okay, I think in answering the first part of that question, in terms of special scrutiny committees, we're trying to move to a position where, you know, we do everything, and not broadcasting would be an exception. With regard to the panels, I think we need to just think that through a little bit more as we move closer to having one. I see no reason why any of the public meetings that we're engaged in aren't being webcast, to be perfectly honest, and if that's possible, then we'll progress that way.
Councillor Ashley.
Sorry to come back again. One thing that drove me mad on when we done waste was where we all clustered round one mic down on that top table there, and I kind of got lost on it, which is unusual for me, assuming that my voice would be heard, and there were three of us sharing there. I totally agree with what Leader's suggesting on that microphone system, because we got totally lost in this banging a thing all the time. I've got a very loud voice, but even I couldn't be heard there. A suggestion, please.
There is an option. Obviously, we looked at bringing new microphones in when we installed the webcasting system, and for a wireless microphone system to replace what we've got, we were talking somewhere in the region of £60,000. It's a lot of money. We've subsequently, what we do at every council meeting, which, you know, members may or may not yet be aware of, is we've got a roving mic over with Chris, and if you are having microphone problems, that's available, and available free of charge. I'm not saying we're not going to explore replacing, but you just need to be aware of the size and scale of the costs attached to doing so.
Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarity, I just wanted to ensure that we weren't going to webcast what's being called, the pre-meeting meetings that we have to hold for various committees, because during those we have discussions about who to call in and all the rest of it. So just want to make sure that that's exempt from the webcasting, and also things like dealing with. We had an instance yesterday where we were dealing with confidential issues, pink papers, and where there's exclusion of members of the press and public. Obviously, you need to have facilities in place to be able to deal with that adequately as well.
Yeah, you can confirm that quickly. We're talking about the public meetings, the actual committee meetings, nothing else. And in terms of exempt items, we have the facility to broadcast the meeting and then pause the webcast at the time that those exempt items are being dealt with, so it doesn't go public.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, can I say I agree with Councillor Ashley when he says about it would be interesting to have a breakdown of the figures, Richard, and especially in regard to our officers, how many go on there. I've got no objections at all. I'm happy to support the recommendation. I think it gives more democracy and people can see democracy at work. I would say it's ironic that several years ago a member of this council proposed that we have webcasting and it was turned down. I'm glad to be here in this position where we are improving the situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. The recommendations are shown on page 146 of your agenda. Can I have a show of hands, please? Anyone for? Okay, thank you, members. That's unanimous and agreed. Thank you, Richard. We'll move on to agenda item 16, the outcome of a complaint, the local resolution protocol. Linda Willis, Chief Legal Officer and Monitoring Officer, can you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a short report reporting to members the outcome of a complaint under the local resolution protocol. The local resolution protocol was adopted by Council in 2011. It was developed by the Ethics and Standards Committee, which has its remit to uphold standards for members. And this is the first complaint that has been brought under that protocol. It involved the two councillors that have actually left the chamber because they have a prejudicial interest, and that's Councillor Daniels and Councillor Harris. The complaint was brought by Councillor Harris. And the complaint was based on a tweet. As members will know, a tweet is only 140 characters. And the committee had to decide bringing what a fair-minded observer might make of that statement. And they took a good deal of time to deliberate on that, having taken evidence. And their majority conclusion was that the tweet was inaccurate, but there was no malicious intent, and they recommend no further action. As I said, their remit is to uphold standards, the very best of standards, and they would remind members that, of course, the WLGA has given advice to members on using social media, particularly at meetings. So, if I could direct members to the recommendation in 7.1, it is set out in the alternative because that is what the local protocol requires. But as monitoring officer, I would recommend that Council considers adopting 7.1a, that they accept that majority decision of the Ethics and Standards Committee. Thank you.
Okay, members, we have a choice to accept the decision of the Ethics and Standards Committee or to take no further action. What is your wish, members? Councillor Brooks?
Yes, I would recommend that we accept point A of this recommendation. You will be aware, of course, that I'm a member of the Ethics and Standards Committee. I can confirm that everything was taken and looked at over a very long period of time in respect to this particular matter.
Thank you. Is that seconded? All in favour? Anyone abstaining? Anyone against? Okay. The results were 8-4. The recommendations are carried. Thank you, members. Move on. Yeah. Can we call Councillor Harris and Councillor Daniels back in? Okay, we'll move on. Oops. Okay, members, we'll move on to agenda item 17, the modular constitution. I'm having a funny moment, sorry. Linda Willis, can you present your second report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The Constitution is a long document, and of course, the one that we're operating, I think, first started its life in 2004, and it's been patched and altered and amended over the years. Indeed, I think at most councils we have an item that requires us to adjust it in some way. As the report sort of outlines, there was a process in England, and now it's been repeated in Wales, to have what they call a model constitution, really a framework of setting out where the various required bits of a constitution should be. And the idea is that all constitutions of authorities in Wales should adopt the same format. That's not to say that they contain the same things other than what is required by legislation. There still is the ability to have local variations which particularly suit us, where we have public questions, how many days' notice you need to give, how long people can speak, etc. And that ability is still there. And what I'm asking Council to do is actually give me permission, because it's my personal duty to keep the Constitution updated, to work with the Members' Constitution Working Party, which is a working group, not a committee, whose remit is to consider such things so that they can understand how we are transferring our existing constitutional arrangements into this format. It's probably going to be less different for us than it is for other authorities who have more awkwardly arranged constitutions with articles at the back. The idea is it is more user-friendly, it has consistent vocabulary, it has also much more polished formatting and numbering which aids interpretation. With the Constitution Working Party, we will have to try and do this in bite-sized pieces, but there will be no changes to the Constitution until they come back in those bite-sized pieces to Council for approval. As I say, mostly it will be transferring the existing arrangements. As ever, as we work, there will be regulations which require us to update little bits and pieces, which will be also done. It may also be an opportunity, but this is only if Council so wish it, to think, is there anything in our existing arrangements which we come to look at that we might want to change? So there are 3 strands to that work, but as I say, nothing will happen until it comes back for final approval to this Council. I would point out that there are a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 7 members on the Constitution Working Party. At the moment, we have 4 members, but it is designed to be a cross-party working group. So that's all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, members. Any comments or questions? Councillor Rees.
As the Chief Legal Officer has mentioned, the Constitutional Working Party is supposed to be cross-party, and there are currently Labour representatives and independent group representatives. There is no Plaid Cymru representative and there is no Conservative representative. I think from the Plaid Cymru point of view, as we are looking at reforming the Constitution, it's important that small groups are represented on that committee, and as well there are a number of councillors who are independents not in a group, and I think a view from that direction would be helpful when we frame the Constitution before it comes to Council. So therefore I'm asking Council to extend an invitation to possibly the Plaid Cymru group and the Conservative group to see if we could put a member on the Constitution Working Party.
Madam Mayor, can I suggest that I'll meet with the opposition leaders that are not represented on that, and we'll have a discussion with Linda and resolve it.
Thank you, Leader. I think perhaps if members agree is that you may consider the recommendation subject to further appointments being made as appropriate to the Members' Constitution Working Party.
But can we be clear that Council appoints members of that working party?
I think that would be the recommendation. It would have to be Council, so obviously it would have to come back to the next Council meeting for you to confirm those the nominees that you may wish to put forward, unless you're able to do it at this meeting.
You say unless we can do it at this meeting, but it isn't on the agenda as such, and there are members who aren't present who might want, I can't imagine that they would want to be on the Members' Constitution Working Party, but that's not the point really, is it? It's not an agenda item.
No, but I think it is a motion that could be brought without notice in relation to this agenda item. But I think from what you're saying, Councillor Morby, that there will be nominees voted on at the next meeting, and the Constitution Working Party will then be possibly at full complement. But I need you to either to Council either to accept the recommendation here, or make it conditional to further appointments being made by Council before it can take place.
Yeah, I don't want to take this to ridiculous lengths, but I think what we've got is a procedure which the leader has offered, that he will consult the party leaders of those who don't have representation on the working party. That can be made clear by email to all members, so that those who are interested can put forward their names to the leader, and then that can be subject to the report to the next council. I'm keen to have other people on it. It might give me an opportunity to go off it, but
sorry, Councillor Moy, I was just clear as to whether the Constitution Working Party, if you approve the recommendation, can take it forward now, or would need to wait until Council had considered further appointments to it.
Just one question for clarity. When is the next meeting of the Constitution Working Party going to happen, where it's going to consider the Constitution? Is that going to be before the next full council or not?
It would have been helpful if it can. If not, it can be delayed until after the next meeting, if that's helpful.
Then we could do that.
You know, all these members now suddenly keen to be a member of the Members' Constitution Working Party had the opportunity at the annual council, which wasn't so long ago. So let's not. You know, the fact is that the Members' Constitution Working Party meets on an ad hoc basis, and if the Chief Legal and Monitoring Officer needs to have a meeting or to conduct a meeting by email, then that's been the custom and practice for Linda to effectively determine that, and we always bow to Linda in that regard. So that's the position. If we have to do something before members, volunteers or otherwise, are elected or appointed to the working party, so be it. You have to wait till council has appointed you before you can take part. Sorry about that.
Sorry, members, I don't want to have added to any confusion I might have created, but the Constitution Working Party, as Councillor Morby said, will operate if it needs to be consulted on other matters as it would do normally. But this is specifically about taking the modular constitution forward, so perhaps that distinction might be helpful here.
Well, I've just indicated it's in your hands, Linda, not ours.
Can I suggest then that the Mayor put forward the recommendation to take this forward as it is?
Okay, so we'll take forward the recommendation as it is on page 152 of your agenda. Can I have a show of hands, please? Anyone for? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you, members. It's agreed. Move on to agenda item 18, Democratic Services Committee membership. Linda Willis, can you present your third report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a short report which I think explains that Council needs to align the chairmanship of the Democratic Services Committee with its membership. And I just remind members that regulations prevent a Labour member being chairman of this committee.
Okay, so we're going to open this one up for nominations for the chair.
Can I just ask you to put some more meat on the bone and explain that? Because last year, Calvin Arnott was the chairman of both committees. So what's changed between now and then?
As I think the report outlines, at the AGM, Council appointed Councillor Elizabeth Haynes. But subsequently, when you came to look at the committee membership, Councillor Haynes wasn't her party's representative on that committee. It was Councillor Mike Jeremiah. So it would be difficult for Councillor Haynes to be chair of a committee that she's not appointed to. So can I suggest you might decide who will be the chair, and the chair then might inform the committee membership. Councillor Haynes.
The independent group nomination remains Councillor Mike Jeremiah.
Right. So here then you already have a committee selection, and out of those members you have to select who will be chair. Council has to appoint the chair.
Contrary to the discussion today, no, yesterday and about 2 days.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, even, sorry. I do apologise. If it would be helpful, the leader at the AGM clearly thought it was appropriate that the leader of the largest opposition party have the responsibility of being Democratic Services. I know the leader of the largest opposition party by value of number has the advantage of a senior salary. It was by way of allowing her the reason for having that senior salary to running a committee as opposed to just being notionally responsible for 5 members of an independent group, whether or that not be an oxymoron or not. In terms of that working, the Labour group was prepared to give up one of its seats and offer that to the leader of the opposition so she would be able to carry out her functions. I understand that the leader and both leaders have had a discussion, and that Councillor Haynes was not in a position to take the chairship and accordingly has made the nomination. The Labour group reaffirmed the former nomination of Councillor Calvin Harnett, who is not present today, but I can advise you that we have discussed this with Councillor Calvin Harnett, and he is prepared to shoulder the responsibility of 2 committees with only the one SRA as per the rules, if that assists.
Can we vote on it? All those in favour? Calvin Harnett. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that's agreed, members. Move on to agenda item 19, member question time. There are 8 members' questions for today. The questions are shown on the sheet circulated. So, I have a question from Councillor Wayne Tomlinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I read out my question, may I, Madam Mayor, briefly say from an earlier discussion on off-road motorbikes that how encouraging it is that the police have measures in place to stop them, causing a nuisance to local people, and that as an authority we play our part in conjunction with them. My question to the Executive Member for Planning is, ward members and residents of the Aberystwyth ward, and especially those that live close to and adjacent to the private derelict land of the British Talloway, would like to know if there is land available to accommodate off-road motorbikes within the county borough of Torfaen. The problems of off-road motorbikes have got worse, and it is now unbearable for residents to live peacefully in their own homes because of the constant noise, speeding and harassment caused daily by off-road motorbikes. If any land were such a possibility, then obviously there will be a need for off-road motorbikes to be properly marshalled, insured, and well away from housing and leisure routes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I ask Councillor Gwynaira Clark, Executive Member for Housing, Planning and Public Protection, to answer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson, for the question. As part of the preparation of the local development plan, a call for sites was advertised. This allowed anyone to submit a request for use of a piece of land to be included in the consideration of the local development plan. No land was put forward for off-road biking, and also no request was made for land to be made available for off-road biking. Therefore, no land was allocated for this use in the local development plan. In recognition of the problems that unregulated off-road biking is causing at locations such as the British, however, a meeting was held on the 3rd of June 2014 with representatives of the Commons Association, the police, local councillors and officers from Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent to consider the issue. The first meeting of a working group led by Gwent Police will be held on the 11th of July with the aim of developing an action plan to deal with this issue. Should potential sites arise through this process, they will be considered through the planning process. I need to add also that I was very encouraged, as you were, Councillor Thompson, and I know that Councillor Giles Davis will be, by the discussion we had this morning and the fact that it is not just a police matter, but it is, we need to have other partners on board to resolve the situation. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas, have you got a supplementary question?
Thank you, Executive Member. I would like at some point, if we could carry this forward, maybe having a seminar, which I feel would be appropriate, especially in line with the local police, who are actually taking a robust approach on this.
Thank you for that. As was indicated earlier, it would be entirely up to the leader, but I'm sure he would welcome a seminar because it doesn't just involve the north of the borough, it involves all of Torfaen. So I would be encouraged by the fact that we can discuss this openly in a seminar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Fuser, would you ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The question is, with the recent media attention on the Council's cemetery rules and regulations, does the Executive Member feel a member seminar to explain why certain items are not allowed would be beneficial, as there seems to be a lot of confusion surrounding grave personalisation?
Councillor Wellington, would you like to answer the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's timely that we hold a member seminar on this issue so that members, some of whom are newly elected since the rules and regulations were agreed, can we fully understand why certain items are not allowed and to give a view on whether the rules and regulations should be changed. I'll seek a seminar date, preferably before the recess, if that is possible. A seminar will also allow us to address some of the matters that have been raised in the media on this issue. The Department gave advance notice of their intentions using signs. the local media, Torvine Talks, and our website, so that the policy made clear a 2-month period was used to allow items to be removed by the owners. However, I think it's right that we apologise for any distress caused to relatives and agree to learn lessons from what has happened. There is a delicate balance to be struck between the wishes of all relatives of those buried in our cemeteries. We also need to be able to maintain our cemeteries so that they don't get overgrown. It's very complex, very emotive issue. We need to deal with it with care. We have apologised as a local authority. We now need a seminar so that the newer members can become, can have an understanding, if you want, of what the policy is.
No, thank you, Leader.
Councillor Glyn Karen, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the changes that will be happening to the EAS, with a school improvement in Torvine.
Councillor Yowell, would you like to answer the question?
First of all, I'd like to thank Glyn for the question. Very good of him. The short answer is I believe that the changes in the EAS will enhance school improvement.
Who's supplementary?
Yeah, the reply sort of caught me a bit offhand there, really, because the delivery, I mean, one of the things that it says here, the delivery of consortia service should not be based on employing large numbers of staff, rather a core staff that should draw on the skills of the best head teachers in the regions, along with school improvement experts. So it does sort of, his answer sort of caught me really unsuspecting. I mean, school improvement, although the word school improvement are an awful lot mentioned in this document, school improvement now lies outside what is the basic rules around the EAS, as I understand it.
Yeah, can we make sure that the question relates to the first question, please? Okay, thank you. Colette Thomas, would you like to answer your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The provision of a good broadband service in Henkers is urgently needed for domestic and business use. I have received numerous complaints from residents about the broadband speeds. What is the Council doing to resolve this problem?
Councillor Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is something that the Council has no direct control over. You will, however, no doubt be aware, in some parts of Wales, the rollout of superfast broadband infrastructure is commercially provided and has been taking place over a number of years. But this, to date, has been limited to those highly urbanised areas, which is commonly, commercially viable for the broadband infrastructure companies to invest. This has included some parts of Cwmbran, but not all. In 2013, Welsh Government launched a joint venture with BT, Superfast Cymru, to extend superfast broadway infrastructure to areas where it had been previously commercially unviable. They have a target of bringing the appropriate infrastructure in by 96% of properties in Wales by 2016. Officers in Torvine have met with Superfast Cymru to scope out when the infrastructure will be installed, although BT have confirmed that all 4 telephone exchanges in Torvine will be fibre-enabled as part of the programme. They have enabled to provide specific information about when this will reach these specific cabinets. In practical terms, it means that they are not able to tell us when a specific community will have access to the new infrastructure or the specific speed they will receive. Their reasons for this is that the engineering works involved, upgrading to new fibre optic cabinets, can be quite complex and can require planning consent, road closures, etc., all of which might delay part of the cabinet improvement programme. This makes it very difficult to accurately predict when the specific cabinets will be enabled. Officers have, however, spoken with Superfast Cymru, specifically in the relations to Entlist, and I've received an email confirming that the Entlist area is within the scope of their rollout programme. We have been assured that the non-commercial rollout programme in Torboyne will commence on March 2015, and it is expected to take approximately 12 to 18 months to complete. Unfortunately, we have no control of the order in which the cabinets are enabled. Torboyne Council are working with the Welsh Government to try and find ways to encourage the exploitation of the new infrastructure once it has been installed. However, I should point out that at this stage, once the infrastructure has been installed, residents, businesses will still need to purchase their super-fast broadband via an internet service provider, ISP. And this will dictate the price that they pay. Superfast Cymru has suggested that any interested residents, businesses registered on their website to receive updates on the rollout programme.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, have you a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Kemp, would you like to ask your question?
Would the executive member give a statement in regard to the working schedule for both the maintenance and cleaning of Torboyne County Borough Council public bus shelters, please?
Councillor Wellington, would you like to answer this on behalf of Councillor Cunningham?
Right, Madam Mayor. Following recent budget reduction, there is no longer a schedule of cleansing for the fabric of bus shelters. Shelters are cleansed on a reactive basis following concerns raised by members, the public or our highway inspectors. The timescale for response is dependent on the nature of the concern. For example, abusive graffiti would be promptly addressed, but other complaints would be cleared as resources allow. In terms of cleansing the internal areas of shelters, these are undertaken as part of the street cleansing schedule, which is cleansed once every 10 days. Weeds are sprayed and grubbed once annually or to address specific issues of concern. With regard to the maintenance of bus shelters, inspections are carried out annually under an annual order that would be issued. Shelter contractors to carry out unnecessary repairs. Officers have reported reactively to any immediate safety returns.
Councillor Kemp, no supplementary. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. Many residents in Fairwater and Coediva suffered flooding in their homes on the 22nd of May. Were all the culverts and drains that Torboyne Council are responsible for in those areas clear before then?
Councillor Wellington.
Madam Mayor, the flooding event on the 22nd of May was exceptional. There are officers within neighbourhood services with 30 years' experience who have not witnessed an event of that nature. The maintenance schedule for both gully and culvert cleansing within Torboyne County Borough Council responsibilities were up to date. All culverts have been recently checked for debris and were cleared at the time of inspection, typically a week before the event. Gullies are inspected on an annual basis. There are no areas of concern across Torboyne County Borough Council where it is thought there is a significant number of areas that are blocked. Members should be aware that there are also gullies, particularly across Cumban, in parking areas that are the responsibility of Bronavon Community Housing. During and immediately following the event, Council employees were working to deal with the effects of the event, including unblocking gullies and culvert grills, and dealing with the significant amount of debris brought down by watercourses by the massive volume of water. Officers continue to work on assessing the event, and a report will be produced in due course, which will quantify and qualify the weather conditions and any other opportunities that we may have to clean the gullies.
Councillor Reid.
Diolch am eich ateb. Thanks for the answer. Flooding in Fairwater and Coediva has occurred previously. What action does the Council intend to take to help ensure the future risk to residents' dwellings is minimised?
We are currently drafting a report on the flooding incidents that took place on the 22nd of May, following which we'll be assessing if there are any remedial works that can be put in place to mitigate future property flooding incidents due to extreme weather. However, the funding for such schemes will be difficult in the current economic climate, as any such flooding prevention measures will be costly and beyond the existing department's budget allocation.
Okay. Councillor Maria Graham, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to Executive Member for Housing Planning and Public Protection. With more housing developments planned further up the valley, resulting in a faster distribution of storm water into the Avon Lloyd, has the Council done a risk assessment about possible flooding resulting in Lantanam Ward? Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Graham, for the question. The issue of flood risk was considered in the preparation of the Torfaen Local Development Plan, and apart from 3 sites, the British, Usk Vale and the Eastern Strip Cwmbran, all sites selected were outside identified flood risk areas. Flood risk was a very key issue for the Local Development Plan to address. A broad-level assessment identifying the national policy context for flood risk and how a precautionary principle advocated in the National Planning Guidance to avoid development in the floodplain was embraced in the local development site process. A specific paper accompanying the local development plan process identified the information of the Council and has an on-site specific basic identifying where the consequences of flooding can be managed, as well as setting out within the justification for the inclusion of the small number of sites, the 3 I mentioned. In addition, all new developments are required to be designed to have no greater than existing greenfield runoff rates, so that all new developments will not add to downstream flooding. New housing developments are designed so that surface water within the site is stored within pipes or underground tanks and is then released slowly, and its release does not coincide with storm. This design process ensures that there is not a faster distribution of storm water into the Avon Lwyd, and where we know that there could be a flood issue, we further restrict the runoff sites. We do ask for a flood consequences assessment as part of the planning application process where we believe there's a risk of flooding. We determine this by referring to the flood plans produced by Natural Resources Wales. A flood consequences assessment was produced for the coal store site in Lantanam, and Barrett's would have designed their site accordingly. However, I would point out that no strategy or risk assessment would have considered the storm event of the 22nd of May. And it was one of those storms that I think each and every one of us can remember where we were at that time. In accordance with the Flood Risk Management Act, the Land Drainage Officer will be producing hazard maps and a flood risk management plan for the county borough. What I would also say to Councillor Graham, perhaps it might be useful for her and any other members that would like to see how a new development takes on a flood risk, as we saw in New Inn. Councillor Mills and the leader and I went to a new development there, and we saw how the underground storage was containing the water and allowing a slow drip. So if ever you wanted to see that, we can certainly arrange that, and I think you'll find it really interesting, and certainly one that will prevent any flooding further down the valley, as you've just described.
You've got a supplementary? No? Okay, Councillor Rees, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, for the leader. At a strategic level, in terms of economic outcomes, how important is it to the residents of Torfaen that Wales stays in the EU and can access funds from it?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Rees. It's hugely important. The EU brings real benefits to Wales and Torfaen through the single market and billions of pounds of EU funds. Through the structural funds, Wales has benefited from just over £4 billion since the year 2000, supporting businesses, research and innovation, helping people into work, increasing skills, improving transport and digital networks, regenerating our communities and enhancing our environment. There have also been major infrastructure investments, including the work currently being carried out on the A465's Hedders of Valley Road. Since 2007 in Wales, EU projects have created 7,600 enterprises and 24,000 jobs, assisted 53,800 people into work, and 161,000 to gain qualifications, and 37,500 into further learning. Wales also benefits from EU funds through the Common Agricultural Policy, providing £260 million a year in single farm payments to more than 16,000 farms in Wales. More than 500 million has been invested since 2007 in initiatives such as Farming Connect and the KITE project to help increase the competitiveness of farms and rural businesses, and to improve the quality of life for our rural communities and the environment. Rural communities, businesses and the countryside also benefit from a complementary rural development plan and £847 million programme co-funded by the Welsh Government and the EU. This was paid for the refurbishment of Llanrafan Manor. The South East Wales Specialist European Team has recently completed a video of success stories in the South East Wales funded through Structural Fund, and this will be made available to all via a dedicated YouTube channel shortly. For Torfaen, the European Regional Team Fund has provided £3.8 million for projects benefiting communities in and around Pontypool for the past 4 years. This has been levered in by a further £6 million of Welsh Government and Heritage Lottery funding, giving the Council £10 million to spend on projects to improve Pontypool Town Centre, Trevethion and Garndiffath by bringing vacant properties back into use, refurbishing Pontypool Indoor Market and making town and neighbourhood centres more accessible. This is helping to create new jobs and attract further investment from the private sector, at a time when many communities have suffered significant hardship as a result of the recession. European funding is absolutely vital in helping to create a more resilient and successful economy. I want to remind members that between the year 2000 and 2007, I chaired the Objective 1 Strategic Partnership, which brought in monies that we know as Richard 1, Richard 2 and Son of Richard, which is responsible for most of the development in Torfaen. I currently sit on the European Programme Monitoring Board for Wales, so that all projects in Wales, farming or indeed industrial or commercial, comes over our desk.
Thank you. Have you got a supplementary?
I don't have a question, just to say thank you very much for that comprehensive answer, which illustrates dramatically how important EU membership is to the people of Torfaen.
Right, we go to agenda item 20, date of next meeting. For your information, members, the next ordinary council meeting will take place on the 22nd of July at 10 a.m. in the council chamber. Agenda item 21, cabinet decisions. Cabinet decisions are on page 155 of the agenda. There were no challenges to the decisions. Do members have any questions on any of the decisions? No? All okay to note the decisions? Thank you, Member. The Cabinet decisions are noted. That is the end of the Council meeting. Thank you for your attendance and contributions. And can you make sure that you have signed any interests in the relevant register and signed it? Thank you.